Hi everyone, so today I'll be reviewing What Everybody is Saying by Navarro and Marvin Karlins. This book tells you how to decode someone else's thought and behavior, how to avoid deceptive behavior, and how to act accordingly to certain behavior. And there's also lessons on how your family, friends, employee, and even strangers think of your behaviors. So this book is written by Navarro, a former FBI counterintelligence special agent specializing in nonverbal communication for 25 years, and Marvin Karlins, who received Ph.D. in psychology at Princeton and also a senior professor of management at the University of South Florida. So the book opens up with defining what is nonverbal behavior, which is transmitting information through facial expression, gestures, and even tone of voice rather than the spoken words itself. These nonverbal behaviors are said to reveal people's thoughts and feelings and are sometimes referred as tells. The first chapter also explains the basic of nonverbal communication and how to successfully decode it by, for example, being more observant of the environment and noticing baseline behavior in others, deciphering multiple tells, and also being able to tell whether someone is being comfortable or not. And the authors also gave the example on what kind of behavior is considered as comfortable and uncomfortable. For example, pacifying behavior like stroking the face or the neck indicates someone is in a stressful situation and not very comfortable. On the other hand, gravity-defying behaviors like pointing your toes upward will indicate that you're quite comfortable and friendly with the person that you're with. I really like the fact that this book is written in simple and super straightforward. You don't have to be an expert at body language to understand this book. This book proves that nonfiction could be really fun and engaging to read, especially if it's written well, while at the same time it provides new information that is practical to everyday life. And as a law student, I'm really happy that the authors build their case and how important body language is by providing a literal legal case, which is Terry versus Ohio, a landmark decision from the United States Supreme Court. This decision validates nonverbal behaviors indicate criminality if they are properly observed and decoded. The second chapter of this book is, I think, also worth discussing. I really like that the book provides a very precious information regarding people's limbic brain, which is the part of human's brain that reacts to the world and reflects. It provides a number of nonverbal tells and regulating behaviors when humans are facing dangerous situations that assures human survival, such as fight, flight, and freeze response. Why I think this particular part is very informational is because I think some of us are merely familiar with the fight or flight response. Even I, before reading this book, I'm only familiar with this particular jargon and kind of forget the freeze response. However, both humans and animals has three of these responses: the fight, flight, and freeze, in which this reaction create nonverbal behaviors that helps to decipher people's thoughts and feelings. It's interesting to see how each of these responses are translated to everyday life. For example, for the freeze response, when you see someone just walking on the street and they immediately stop and put their palm over their forehead and remembering that whether they forget to turn off the stove or not. So this freeze movement gave time for that person's brain to assess whether the threat comes from a predator or a memory. I found that this particular passage is rather important as it might give an indication of whether or not a children is being a victim of abuse. So according to the book, children who might be a victim of abuse often shows freezing limbic behavior, in which that their hands will go dormant and they will usually avoid eye contact. Although I wish that the book will explain a bit further about the difference between a man and woman's limbic brain, whether or not there's a difference or they're actually the same. As the book later mentioned that there are certain gestures that are specifically made by either men or women, and I would wonder if that happens due to a different structure in the limbic brain, or because of societal influence. This book then proceeds with explaining how each body language reveals a person's thoughts or feelings. One important thing that the book notes is that most people observes body language from top to bottom. It means that a person starts to decode from facial expression and then down to their feet. According to this book, in reality, this kind of method is flawed because people are used to lie with their faces. Even since children, people are usually told to making a good face. So according to Navarro, after hearing 1,000 interviews during his FBI days, truthfulness will decreases as he observed people's body language from feet to up. So according to Navarro, if you want to have more correct observation to people's body language, do it from bottom up instead of the other way around. And I really like the fact that this book also structured their chapters in this way. So the book will start with explaining how to decode a behavior from the feet first, and then the latter chapter will decode the behavior according to someone else's facial expression. But I would say that the beginning portion of the book is definitely much more interesting than the latter portion of the book, as I noticed that the more important information had been rendered in the beginning portion of the book, as it already presented how to decode the most honest body part in a person's body. That being said, I don't think that less interesting will be considered as boring. So reading from the title of the book, I merely expected that this book is going to help me in deciphering other people's thoughts and feelings. I didn't expect it to give an indication in how I would be perceived by others, as the book also gives example on how to greet people and act accordingly around certain people. Another good point about the latter half of this book is how the information regarding detecting deception is being presented. In no way or form this book is making a false claims or promises to answer how to tell whether someone is lying or not. So there's just this certain humble quality about the book. So the book gave a framework in how to detect deception. However, the book also warns that there is not an absolute there's not an absolute science whether someone is lying or not. So after reading this book, I noticed that I became much more emotionally aware. So I'm the kind of person who doesn't really think about my feelings that much, but as I read this book, I understand what kind of physical cues that indicates whether I'm stressed or comfortable. I notice more about my feelings from that physical cues, like if my feet are bouncing, or whether I'm stroking my neck, or whether I'm stroking my face. I started to notice what I'm feeling at a certain time. It's just that sometimes I'm used to being uncomfortable and I didn't notice if I'm being uncomfortable. So when I knew that I have my body tells that I'm being uncomfortable, I will be much more in tune with my emotion and able to act accordingly. Maybe to be kinder to myself, practice my own self-care, and investigate why I'm feeling in such way. All in all, I really enjoyed reading this book. This was a very quick read for me. I do think that the content is thorough while at the same time not being too lingering to a certain topic and makes it kind of boring. The writing is really witty as well, so it's written from the second point of view. So it feels like the book is talking directly at me. It feels like I have this mentor in decoding someone else's body language. There's also lots of pictures that's rather helpful for me in determining which body language that is being discussed. I don't know, I think I'm just that kind of person who, when you describe a scene, I just describe a gesture. I can't really imagine it that well, so the picture really helps. I would definitely recommend this book for those of you who wants to start to learn about body language, who just doesn't know where to start, or who wants to read a nonfiction book that is not intimidating. I would give this book a 4.5 stars. I deduct 0.5 stars just because I just wish that the limbic brain part is much more explored. But overall, I really enjoy this book. It's very informative. but it's not difficult or anything to read. So it's informative and accessible, which is the two things that I find very important in a nonfiction book. So that was today's review of What Everybody is Saying by Joe Navarro and Marvin Karlins. I hope that this review will help you in determining whether this book is worth your time. Let me know in the comment section below whether if you're interested to read this book, or if you have read this book, please share your thoughts. I would like to thank everyone who made it through the end. Thank you guys so much for watching, and may your tea will always be warm for reading.